Hey everybody, welcome to Woodworking Wisdom. My name's Colwin, and today is all about corncob pens. So you've had your barbecues over the weekend, you've got your corncob cores left over. What are you going to do with them? We're going to make pens with them, of course. So this is all your basic pen turning tools and holding methods. We're going to start with a pen mandrel. But over the weekend, I've had the corncobs, I've cut them in half, and I've held them or put them on a towel in the bright sunshine just to bake them and make them really, really dry before drilling them out. And in a moment, we're going to look at soaking them in a spirit stain and then super glue. And we're actually going to finish with a super glue finish, a CA finish as well. So let's have a look. Let's get started. Okay, so we've got our corncobs cut into squares and they've since dried. I've dried these over the weekend. So they're nice and light, they're very absorbent now. The reason that I've cut them square is to take away a lot of that bulk so the dye doesn't have far to sink in. I've also pre-drilled. Now we are going to have to re-ream these later on as well. So, but again, it means that the dye can travel up through the centre. It can also find itself into that corncob from the centre out as well as from the outside in. But you can already start seeing that sort of snake skin effect that we're going to try and achieve here. So pop that in. I'm going to have a good half hour soak in this dye. I can pour back any waste, sort of any excess dye once we've done. So I've got gloves on and I'm on a protected board so my bench doesn't get covered. And just pour over, let it properly soak through. Remember, we want it to get in the center as well. Don't worry about excess. We can, like I say, we can pour that back in the tube afterwards. Spirit dye, not water-based dye. We want this to really soak in, and I've just found that Spirit is far better than anything else. Now I'm going to leave those to soak probably for a good half hour to an hour now. Once I've done that, we'll come back, we'll take them out, we'll put them somewhere warm and let them dry. If you haven't got anywhere warm, if it's not particularly sunny outside, then just leave them for more time. So, you know, give them 24 hours to properly set. That's before we then add the thin super glue. So let's come back in an hour and see how they look. Okay, so we're going to use some thin super glue now just to stabilise these corncobs. So we're going to do the same thing. This dye is now dried, so it's been out in the sunshine, dried nicely. So we're going to allow this thin super glue. And again, I'm starting in the inside of the hole. I just want it to soak all the way in and properly stabilise everything. Remember, we're going to re-ream the holes in the center, so just all on the inside. Well, whilst we're turning later on, we are going to keep using this super glue just to properly stabilize as we go, because we'll probably find that we'll need to add a little bit of hardener, which this is doing. So look, we're just letting it soak, and it's really absorbing quickly, and we want it to become a nice hard surface. At the moment, it's got the sort of consistency of, I would say, probably polystyrene, so it's quite soft, and we don't want that. So soaking it in nicely. Of course, if you've got resin and a vacuum chamber, then you would do that instead, but this is just a quicker and very cheap solution. Just be a little bit aware that you will get vapor given off with when you're using this sort of amount of super glue, the thin. So make sure you've got a nice ventilated area. Don't stand over it, otherwise it will sting your eyes, the vapor. So I'm just being a little bit careful not to glue it to my backing board, so I'm doing two sides at a time. And of course, being careful of my fingers. And then again, this is going to have to be left to properly set. What you don't want to be doing now is turning within the next 5 or 10 minutes, because this is now sunk deep in to the core of these corncobs. And if you start turning, all you're going to do with that centrifugal force is let it spray out at you So we got to let this dry properly now. If I'm honest with you, I'd probably let it dry overnight. So that's the first stage of this stabilising with the super glue. As we turn, like I say, we may have to add another stage. And then even go to a thicker one, just a thicker glue, just to fill any voids that might have crept in. But that's certainly a good start. We'll leave that to dry. Like I said, I would prefer to leave that well overnight to set properly before we start again and re-ream and prep for the lathe. So we'll come back in a few hours and see what's happened. So what we've done now, we've soaked these in the, first of all the stain, then we soaked them in the super glue. Now they're fully dry and cured, so there's weight back to them now. So all I need to do really is just re-ream them, just holding them in the chuck. And I've got an 8mm drill bit for the style of pen that we're using here, so we've got to glue in the tubes in a moment, but I'm going to ream them out first. I've done 3, just 1 as a spare, so I'm going to pick the best ones now. Even though we're going to ream them, we're going to use the best 2. So let's just grip them in the pen jaws, and this is going to just drill through ever so easily. So through we go. It's a lot harder to remember now because we've got it stabilised with the glue. All the way through. There we are, just passed through. So we need to do that on the other 2 as well. I'm going to keep going with 3 just in case at whatever stage one might break down or might have a problem with one of them. But we can always keep that other one for a single barrel pen kit as well. So do. Now I'll just take out the drill bit from the chuck before I go and spike my elbow on it, and then we're going to take these blanks out of the lathe and we're going to go back to the bench and we're just going to glue in the tube. So I'm going to pick the best 2. Going to pick the best 2 out of those and glue the tubes in. So over to the bench. Okay, so we've got the 2 that I've selected here. I've just double checked the fit to make sure the tube fits in there nicely, and it does. So that'll go in there really well. In fact, I'll use a nice flat end. I'm going to use the thick super glue on these, and we'll start off with the tube partially in. Good coverage up through, and then a nice quick on the corner of the board. And I'm just going to leave that to settle for 5 minutes before I add a accelerator. Same here. A good amount. We'll come back to this slow super glue in a minute. We might use it to fill some voids as well. So there we are, they're both there. If we want to accelerate a little bit, we can. Remember that accelerator will only go down so far. So I would like just to leave this now for a couple of minutes, just to set, and then we'll come back. We'll ream the ends, okay, so we'll use the barrel trimmer to clean back to those tubes, and then we'll get to the lathe and finish these off. We'll do the easy bit then, we'll turn them. Right, so we've given this time now to dry, so we can trim all the way down to the brass barrels. To do that, we do need to hold each piece in a vise. Okay, just a little bit of pressure. Then we're going to use the barrel trimmer. Okay, so it's just basically a nice barrel down here with a cutting edge up here. So we're going to pop that in. I'm going to cut all the way down to the brass tube. There we are, so you can see the brightness. Let me show the camera. You can see the brightness of the tube coming through now, and you can also see where that die is penetrated as well. It gives you a good example there. So you've got some really nice patterns going on now. Like timber, you know, a corn cob has hard and soft bits. Soft bits absorb more than the hard will. A little bit more. Last side. Yeah, so now we know that end is at right angles to the actual brass tube itself. So that one's ready to go. So we can put them on the lathe now and start turning. Right, so we've basically prepped. So all that time was spent prepping up the blanks. So if you think about them, we've dried the corn cobs, we've pre-drilled them, and then we added the die. So the die had to dry. So I put that out in the sunshine for around about 2 hours altogether to let it dry off after it had soaked in the die. And then we added the thin super glue. Now we've got our blanks. The tubes are glued in and really ready to put on the mandrel. And the quick bit now, the turning itself. There may still be a little bit of sort of care to take with them as we're actually turning them, so there may be little voids and things like that, because we're not using resin, remember, we're not using vacuum or anything like that. This is purely done with the super glue. So we're going to just check on that as we go through. So I'm using the correct bushings for this kit, and the kit is an Americana style of pen, one of my favorites. And this particular pen has a little decorative collar halfway, so I'm putting the bushing to suit. And then we're going to just sandwich everything with our blanks, and then finally a little nib bushing right there, and then we'll bring everything up on that compression pen mandrel. A little bit of pressure, and I'm using the small tool rest. I'm not going to turn with too much force on this, so on a fairly high speed. And when I say fairly high, 2000 plus. There we are. And I'm going to start with, my preference is a small bowl gouge, but you can pretty much start roughing this down with anything. There we are, just exposing those true ends. And I'm going to go to the skew chisel in a moment. There we are. Right, let's just stop and have our first look as the sort of patterns that we're getting out of this, because it is quite pretty. There's lovely little snakeskin patterns that we've got coming up. Okay, so we've roughed down basically, and we've got our lengths now. All I want to do with this particular kit, you can see this collar in the middle here. I've got to do a little shoulder here that can then slide over. And in the kit itself, there's a little decorative band. If I can show you here, you can just make out that little decorative band. That's going to take the place of this little collar in the bushing set. So I'm going to turn down to that diameter first. So I've got to do this fairly carefully, because even though we've added super glue, this blank is fairly fragile. So a little bit at a time and being quite careful. Down to the diameter of the inner bushing. And then just see when that little bushing goes underneath that diameter, you're good. Nearly. A little bit more. There we are. Let's see, just slides over nicely. I want to do a little bit more to that. Just another little cut. Pushing out the way. Here we are. Good thing with the blank, the way we've done it, that dye is actually penetrated from the inside out as well, so we're actually getting darker the further down we go. So it's going to give a real sort of a real nice look to the piece. So now we've got that underneath that diameter. So now this part of the corncob can get to the same diameter as this ring. This to that. This part here to the inner piece, and then this section down to the last bushing. So it's plain sailing really from now on. Just use your skew or whatever you're comfortable with. Give yourself a nice finish down to all those given diameters. Yeah, so that's that one. So this one, exactly the same. Just taking my time. I don't want to take too big a cut because you can easily fracture this stuff. Especially right on the ends here, so just a little bit of care. Right, let's stop and have a look and see what our finish is like. I know it's going to be a nice one because we've got this lovely blue colour coming off there. Look, those lovely markings. So, well, we can start sanding that, I think. So dust extraction on. I'm going to start fairly fine, if I'm honest. So probably around about the 240 because we got a fair finish already. Then a 400. And then finally we'll use a 600 grit. And on this one we're going to give it a CA finish. So we're going to go with the the thin CA. Maybe another bit of 240 needed. I'll hold on to this one a little bit tighter. $400. $600. Stop and have a quick check. Very pretty, nice. So we'll do our CA finish. So this, depending on the amount of coats you give this, can give you a real high gloss finish. It's quite important that your chosen super glue has a good fine nozzle on it. I've got the 03A nozzles here with the glue itself, so this nice fine nozzle just gives us an easy way in. Lathe speed needs to come down now, so I'm using lathe speed of around about 1,000 revs. So sort of 7 to 1,000 works on this one. You need to be fairly rapid with your movements. I'm not going to worry about any of these bushings just at the moment either. So let's get the glue flowing first. You get a little bit of nozzle, a little bit of a block nozzle. These fairly easy to unblock, but also you can, of course, just snip an end off. So little and often with this. Walk away. Just let that set. If you want to in between coats, wait for it to set a little bit. Okay, and then you can give it a spray with the accelerator. If you're in a real rush, go on to the next one. But don't overload it. If you overload it and then try to accelerate, you'll get horrible white reaction that you'll then have to clear. The only way, if you do get that build up, that very, very thick area, the only way to sort that out would be to take it back, sand it back again. And you can do that periodically if you wanted to. If you got a little bit of ridginess, I'll get a little bit of ridge there. If you got a bit too much ridginess, then you can just a little bit of light sanding and start again. It's not an issue. It'll cover it up quite nicely. Walk away. Don't let it build up. Don't go back. Don't be tempted. Just let it set. Let it do its thing. I'm not going to do as many coats as I normally would. I don't want you to hang around for too long, but I'll probably do another 2, and then that'll be fine for this one. Like I say, you can get a really high gloss finish if you use this method. We'll do one more. Let's give it a bit of a squirt with the accelerator, and we'll give it one more going. Once you've done the accelerator, just make sure that's evaporated before you go again. That'll do us for the minute. Just whilst I clear my tools, that can be setting properly. Then we'll take that off the lathe. You might be wondering what happens if you glue this to the mandrel. Very rarely does that happen. I haven't seen that happen very often, but a little craft knife down the side is enough to separate these most of the time. So let's take this one off. Give them a twist. My craft knife. So here we are, look. So that's going away from me. Just pop your knife down the side. And that'll be enough just to pop it off. Alright, from your bushing. So that's one piece. Just be careful of your bushings. Remember, if you drop these in the shavings, that's it. This one again. Oh, that came off quite nicely, look. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the bench. And glue these up to the main pen kit. Okay, so those are the bits of the actual kit themselves. So we've got the actual refill, the nib, we've got the clip here with its silver capture ring, you've got the decorative ring in the middle, and then we've got the holder for the actual mechanism itself. So all of those need to be added to the pen. And start nice and simple, if I'm honest. I tend to start with the cap up here, and then we'll go to the nib, then we'll go to the holder. I am going to glue this ring on also in a moment, so that will be part of the finished pen. And then we add lastly, we'll add the actual refill and the mechanism. So let's start. I'm going to unscrew this silver piece from the actual cap itself. So if we can actually fit that in, and then we screw the mechanism, or sorry, screw the clip on. So it's just something that I've picked up through making a few of these. So that's got to go into what will be the top of the pen. Sorry, my fingers are in the way at the moment. And we're just going to adjust this to suit. So I reckon four stops are going to be enough. I will get my fingers out of the way in 2 seconds. There we are, and push that in nicely. Let's go in a little bit further. Let's use another one of those fingers. Hold that in position. That's it. So now I can screw this section together because we've got the little thread that we've just added in. There we are. I'm going to expose these bits. I think these bits are the pretty bits, so they're going to be nicely exposed, and anything you want to hide you can put underneath the nib. So let's now add that little decorative ring. Okay, we're going to add some glue to that just to make sure it stays there. So let's go, I'll use a little bit of the thick glue, I think. Don't need to use much, and again that's where these little applicators come in really useful. Just a little dab, and that can be then just drying whilst we put the rest of that pen together. There we are. I'll pop that to one side, just let that dry for a minute whilst we then add the nib to the lower part of the pen. So that's going to go there. Now the end of this here has a little hole in it, so let's just bring back a few of these fingers, turn this around. I'm going to pop that in the hole. Just ease everything up nicely. Alright, so we've got the nib now attached. So the next thing, again, we just need to add under pressure this little capture ring here. Now this has a resistance fit here, but it has a thread on this side, which in turn the mechanism then threads into. So we're just going to push that in. So we'll do the same thing. We'll put that into that little hole that there is there. That should be enough length, and then we push in. It's good. Then your refill goes in and your mechanism threads on to that area there, and then you can see just by moving that mechanism, whether you can see there, the nib is coming out and then retracting back in again. Alright, so a nice little mechanism. It's very simple then. All you have to do is push the two together. So bearing in mind that I've just glued that ring on, a little bit of pressure, and there you have your pen all assembled. It's one of my favourite pen shapes, this one. A little bit, the Americana is very similar to the European style. It's that the European style comes down to a smaller dome, usually a gold or silver colour dome in the top. I like the flat top. The black and black here is really nice. But a lovely little pattern coming from that particular one. I've just got one more here that I'm going to show you. This is done in a slightly red. Okay, so again, it's an Americana. We've got a different colour, a different look altogether from that one. Slightly coarser corncob as well. I've gone a little bit thinner with this one compared to that one. Just gives a slightly different look also. Well, there we are, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed that. We got a couple of good corncob pens out of it. If you like what you've seen, don't forget, give us a thumbs up, share us around, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, everybody, take it easy. Bye-bye.